meeting to attention. We have four items that we're going to go through. A first item is a pilot of software for guidance to fulfill Act 339. Second, we'll talk about an elementary music pilot, resource pilot. Then we're going to talk about the gifted services review through the MCIU. And last is transition to online testing for the PSSA and Keystone. So first, we're going to turn over to our supervisor of wellness, Erin Dreisbach, and she's going to talk to us about this pilot for software.
All right, so today we wanted to talk about the college and career platform assessment that school counselors are requesting to do. If you could please, next slide. So our high school and our middle school counselors are requesting to assess the Future Ready and college and career programs of 3 different programs. It would be Smart Futures, School Links, and Zello. The programs are free to trial within the district. The assessment would begin around March 11th, and we would look to end the assessment around June 2nd. There would be 6 selected lessons that we would utilize at each building to assess these programs. The platforms will provide necessary professional learning and resources so that counselors are able to effectively provide lessons and assess the program. And it would be for all middle and high school counselors. This is a need based on counselor feedback. There is a curricular need to replace our current Naviance platform. This is no longer meeting the needs of our counselors and our students in providing college planning or delivering lessons aligned to our Chapter 339. So because of this, there is a gap that has emerged where the lessons and career readiness support are lacking. So the goal is to find a new platform to replace Naviance that addresses these gaps in offering effective tools for the college planning, the career exploration, and the compliance with Chapter 339 requirements. This goes into the Pennsylvania Career Readiness Skills of Act 339. And just a little bit of information about Chapter 339. PA does mandate that all school districts align with the state's Career Education and Work Standards, or CEW. This is a requirement that ensures students receive structured career education throughout their schooling and opportunities to develop career portfolios that demonstrate progress in things such as career awareness, acquisition, retention, and entrepreneurship. So through PA and the accountability system, through our Future Ready PA Index, this requires schools to report on these career readiness indicators, or CEW standards. This is by tracking student participation, and districts must collect and submit evidence that students meet these benchmarks in grades 5, 8, and 11. And this is just a snapshot of our Future Ready to show that it is very much an indicator for our career standards benchmark. And again, the key areas for Chapter 339 are career awareness and preparation, career acquisition, career retention and advancement, and entrepreneurship. And to go in a little bit deeper of where there is concern and gaps with Naviance, I will allow the high school to take it over.
Okay, thank you. I'm Kate Kelly. I'm the career counselor at the high school. This is my 2nd year in the role, and I'll let you do my first.
Amanda Conlon, I'm one of the high school counselors. This is the start of my 4th year.
So we put together kind of a list of some of the limitations that we're noticing with our current platform that we're using. I won't read every single bullet point, but just some highlights. It's not as user friendly as we would like it to be. We find that students and the other educators that have to use the platform often find it difficult to navigate, and it discourages consistent usage. Many times we'll have to put together videos and a lot of step-by-step instructions, pull kids in one and work with them one-to-one just to use the platform. So that inhibits students from going onto it on their own. They tend to not go onto it independently. The interface is a little bit poorly designed. That's like on the career front what I've noticed, and then Amanda had noticed with the teachers there's also some challenges with the user friendliness.
Often when it comes to filling out letters of recommendation for college applications, there's a two-part process that teachers have to complete, and oftentimes there is one of those parts that is always missed. Therefore, the student's application is considered incomplete until a counselor tracks it down, going through student by student, because there's no report that generates if something is incomplete or not. So again, that's a use of time. So then we have to reach out to the teacher, oftentimes having to go up to the teacher's classroom to hand show how to get that teacher to submit, and then we have to go back through and then finally submit the completed recommendation on the teacher part.
We also have noticed that it has some limited career readiness tools. It does have a number of career exploration inventories. There's about 7 to 8, but they're not really grade specific. We share those with the middle school. So I think currently they're completing about 6 at the middle school, and we try to do the remaining 3, 2 to 3 at the high school. There's really limited resources that are built into the program for job acquisition skills or job retention skills, and there's really not anything built in for entrepreneurship. So we have to develop those lessons in other ways, like through Google, and we have to build them, but it's also it's challenging to upload them into Naviance, so we usually track those through Google rather than pulling them into the platform. Like, we just keep them in where the students are completing the lesson. But we've noticed, and we're hoping to learn a little bit more, that some of the other platforms have been built with the 339 initiative the plan in mind, and so they have some of these tools that are built in that students can use independently if they would like.
And then going back to the platform having limited number of inventories, these inventories can only be completed one time. So if we ask a 9th grader to complete a skills assessment, then they want to complete it again in their junior year to make a comparison, because we often use these Naviance assessments as part of our graduation portfolio to see where have you come from 9th grade? Has your career path changed? What influenced it? And so having that reflection it cannot be allowed to happen because they can only fill it out one time. If we have the student fill it out a second time, counselor has to go in and manually reset that assessment. However, we lose the initial data from when that student completed that assessment as a 9th grader. We've tried multiple ways of how to save it, right? File save, it should work. It ends up saving as a web page, and so that's not conducive to the counselor or to the student saving that document as a web page. It's not going to save easily as a PDF, and then therefore you can't make that comparison from year to year when you're taking these assessments.
Another thing, there's not really a lot of support for the career artifacts for the student to be able to manage that portfolio themselves, because they are doing some of the inventories in Naviance. A job search would be separately in the program. If we do lessons during extended homeroom, those are separately tracked in Google. If a student goes, for example, like on a career expo field trip and they write a reflection, that's in a separate place. There doesn't seem to be a portfolio, or there is not in Naviance a portfolio or a way for them to view comprehensively. Like, here's all of the things that I've done from 9th grade on my career journey. So they can't really get a comprehensive picture in one spot.
And there's no career exploration tool. So unlike Naviance, these other platforms like Smart Futures and School Links have pages dedicated to individual careers. Some of them also have ways that you can connect with people in the career. So if I'm interested in becoming a pilot, I can reach out to a pilot and send emails to that person my questions about your career. What can also happen is, say we know a local pilot at Reading or something like that. we can then trade out the platform's individual to make it more personalized and more local to the area that we live in, therefore then increasing an opportunity for job shadowing, internships, and future employment.
With the career artifacts, typically we like the student to not just do an inventory, we want them to reflect on that inventory, and there are means to create a survey in there, but it's very basic and kind of rudimentary. You're not able to like integrate, if you wanted to integrate a video clip or any type of like different fonts, or to make it a little bit easier for the students to read. It's difficult to do. It looks, I mean, we'd have to know for the pilot, but that it's a little bit easier on the other platforms. If it's a teacher created material or a student creates an assignment that they feel help them with their career exploration, they're able to upload that. The college search and career functionality, it seems that it doesn't really pull in a lot of outside sources, and it makes it kind of challenging if a student does do something like the federal government has ONET, which is a free government plan. It doesn't really integrate much with that.
In terms of, so I spoke briefly on the career search, but as a college search, counselors are not using it. We're actually going back to College Board Big Future. Their platform is incredibly user-friendly, and every time you add a different selection, so maybe you want to change the size of your school or the location of your school, it will then adjust its output, and you can save everything to your student account, whereas Naviance does not have a user-friendly college search at all.
So moving on to the challenges of material integration and data retrieval, we do have to prepare a report that I then send to Erin, where I track the artifacts. And it is, some of the other platforms have said that they have the ability where you can just export the data directly into the PIMS program, so it would be a little bit more seamless. We would have to look at that to see if that is in fact true. It makes it challenging because it doesn't have a comprehensive view of a student's career goals or needs, so it makes it hard to plan around. Like if I am planning to bring in certain guest speakers, it's difficult to use the Naviance tool to assess where the career interests lie within, like say, the 10th grade students.
And on Naviance right now, we have college signups, which is all handled by the high school secretaries. However, it's not like in other platforms where if I know a couple of kids who are interested in a certain career field or a college, I can assign that visit to them and it would come up on their individual page. That does not exist with Naviance. And parents also have no access to Naviance. I can count on 1.5 hands how many times a parent has actually reached out and said, how do I get access to my part of my child's Naviance? It is not user-friendly for parents at all. Going back to the functionality and also in the integration and data retrieval, I want to stress again that for high school counselors, we are literally going in one by one. We have a printout of our roster and we go in individual student to check to make sure that their transcripts have been sent, letters of recommendations have been sent. We do not receive any email notification from Naviance if a change has been made on a student's account. We are unable to access any kind of report. I have tried multiple times on a search function to see what transcripts are outstanding, and it will not pull any comprehensive, or any of my students for that matter, a comprehensive list. So it is more time consuming on our end to go one by one and have to wait for the page to load to see what is missing and if the student's page is completed.
I guess some goals that we would be looking for would be an enhanced user experience, and some of the programs boast that they also have for students mobile access, which is nice, and it is easier for some of the other schools that are using the other platforms have posted links so that parents can also do the college and career, view their students' college and career data from the sites. That some of the career readiness resources would be a little bit more personalized, so that if students go on trips or attend guest speakers, that they can then pull that into the program and be able to view that site, and that the searches will connect a little bit more comprehensively or the inventories with certain careers and help them to kind of map out what classes they would need to take. Also, just if the data collection was a little bit more efficient, it would help us in our planning as far as career goals, guest speakers, trips, and things like that. We'd be able to target students and also the college visits.
Well, and right now, Kate is doing a phenomenal job at managing the data for the state for the 339. However, she's doing it through individual Google forms. That is a time consuming for 400 plus students for a junior class, times having to also build as a 9th grader and a 10th grader. And then there's no way to analyze that data because not everything is funneling into one Google spreadsheet. So for her, again, it's that use of time. How are we making use of our time effectively? There are also some other highlights to some of the platforms that we're requesting to pilot. They're also available in different languages. Currently, Naviance does not have that capability to translate to different languages. I know the details very thoroughly on School Links. I'm not sure if anybody can speak to Smart Futures or Zello, but School Links can translate to close to 80 different languages, which is something that would be an equitability factor for us. And something that School Links also can offer, which I imagine the other ones can also do, is that in certain points of the year, counselors are it's kind of like that Black Friday, right? Like all hands on deck. So certain times that year, so like Halloween, right before the early action deadline is due, School Links will make their representatives available to us on a 24/7 basis to make sure that enough information is getting pushed through so that there's no lag. So they have a very solid customer service, whereas Naviance became a corporate model a couple years back. So they have lost any sense of intimacy. We no longer have that one-on-one rep that I could just call up and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Hey, I have a question. Now we have to go into Power School. We have to open a ticket. Then we have to wait for somebody to read the ticket and then get back to us. So all of that communication, again, is done online, again, taking time away from our day.
To assess the evaluation, we will be utilizing a rubric by all of our school counselors, and we will also be getting student feedback.
Yeah, how long have we had the current Naviance?
So I can only speak, this is the start of my 4th year.
Yeah.
I can attest that when I was in my previous district, we did bring this on. I was there 10 years ago, but I did fight to bring Naviance on because at 10 years ago, it was the hottest trend and it was what everyone was seeking for. But for as long as I've been here, we've been using Naviance.
Yeah. Do we question about School Links, and then also School Links, is it dual transferable translations or one-way translation? Meaning, are the pages translated into the language of choice, or is also the answers translated then back so then you can read?
In Zello, it was, but I don't think we asked that when we were in the for School Links.
Okay.
So we would try to check that on the pilot.
It's nice because it's nice if the front pages are translated, but if the data is not translated back into English, then it's like, how are we going to then use this information?
And we can totally reach out to Mike and he would get me that answer quite
Okay.
quickly.
Well, do we know the budget numbers comparable to what we currently pay for the current program compared to what these new programs cost, or say potentially cost?
I do have the quotes. There is quite a span on what that looks like. There is, I believe Naviance is around $15,000 that's currently being spent, whereas,
15.15?
yes, I believe it's around 15,000, but I could be off as well. It's been a month or so since I looked at it. Smart Futures is around 14,000. Zello is around 18, and then School Links is more expensive, around 28,000. Now the thing is, right now we are total.
We're not talking large numbers, so I mean, those numbers are actually really tiny, comparable to $120 million budget. So when we got Naviance, it was the program to get. everywhere, not just at PV. How do we make sure that the next program we get is the program not just for 1 year, but for a elongated time, so we're not failing to get actionable data? And then my last question is, so it sounds like the goal now with the newer program would be more action data being presented or being placed by a student and a parent. How do we fare with how many students don't even log into their Naviance or add data? Is it a lot? Okay, so then the question comes down to, what percentage of students don't even use the tool? I'm curious, is it?
Well, I mean, they have to for certain, like the extended homerooms, like we do have them go on, but like
For
as
the
far as
339.
for the 339, but I mean, I would say most students only use it then for the
For
college,
college.
applications.
So
Yeah.
we're not using that platform to its fullest capability.
Or-
And because it's not user friendly. Now, not every student's going to college, and that's fine. However, they're still going to need a platform to complete the 339.
Yeah.
I did also want to add in that these other platforms are a lifetime membership for these students, whereas once they graduate, they only have access to Naviance for 6 months post graduation. But something like School Links, they can always go back and they can continue to go into those career pieces and be like, you know what, I think I'm going to have a career change. Let me explore this career as an option. And so they have so again, yes, you're paying more money, but look at what you're getting as a result from it.
Well, I think that, and also if a student has one of these platforms and they move into the district, if we have a similar one, then we can use that data for their 339 also, or like we will have the access to that, and then they can also take that with them when they leave PV to be able to, even if their school doesn't use that platform, they have the account and
Sure.
they can get on it.
But go ahead.
Yeah. Quick question. Do we know when Naviance, when their contract expires with us, or when's the next payment cycle?
I believe Naviance ends the end of this school year, and we would look to,
Excellent.
yeah.
No, that's good. It just, if it was extended further, you definitely made the case that Naviance is not working for us, and that almost, if you have to track things through Google Forms while still doing this, I mean, that's not a practical use of your time or resources. And a lot of the positives that you said about the other software packages, I think, lend towards moving in that direction. Real quick, it was in 2012 is when we picked up Naviance. So that was quite a while ago, and it may have been great then. It was bought out about 3 years ago, and which is probably when you started to see the service decline.
Yeah.
As far as the asks towards the board, I'm more than supportive of you guys trying to find another system to get us running the way we need to go. Thank you.
I just want to, monetarily, to me, it's not a problem. Do they all offer migration services for the 309s that are already done, or the students have
Well-
to redo them? And then my second request would be, can we plan a way to get more bodies using the tool for everything that it has to offer? Like, can we conceptually think about how we talk to mom and dad, how we talk to student about why this should be used, not just the one part that the state mandates, but the whole aspect of the tool, whether that's through trainings or advisory teachers reminding it, or it's just something that gets sent out, not in those emails. My son gets like literally 1,000 emails a month from the school, but ways to say, hey, this is an important tool for you to use. Obviously, as you get older, it's going to become a little bit more important to you, and really focusing on getting all aspects of the tool being used. Because the other stuff's fun, but if it's not going to be used, it's just going to sit there.
That's why I'm hoping too, with it being a user friendly and accessible through a mobile app. Our kids are on their phones all the time.
That's the
So
key.
If we have them doing something, right now we're allowing them access 4 minutes between the class periods. What if they hop on real fast and just send a quick message to their counselor or sign up for a college or a career visit?
Yep.
It's so much more accessible than having their device. But I would gladly I think your questions are extremely valid, especially like, how are we going to guarantee that this is going to be something for the next 10 years? It's definitely something we can take back to the representatives and inquire that as well.
Now, for the migration issue, as far as like we wouldn't lose the 339 data because I'm currently tracking that in Google, so we wouldn't lose. So we don't really.
We would just pick up.
Yeah.
where
Are
we
they
leave
helping
off.
you input the current ninth graders into the system in an easy way where you don't have to do it one by one by one?
Everything
Okay.
with,
Yes, yeah.
I can again speak to School Links, but they handle everything in terms of taking our information and then just massively uploading it. That is what those IT people are paid to do.
Yeah.
But they are fully confident in being able to do that. And with the way that our contract does end with Naviance, it makes a nice smooth transition because we would onboard with that next platform over the summer, and they would take that time to train us and then to also do that uploading of the information.
And we started the meetings with technology office so that Karthik is on top of this and how we're going to do all those migrations. That's something that we started clearing the way for right away, knowing that those were important things that we had to think about how we're taking that legacy data and using it.
So I guess my question would be, it sounds like you're looking at 3 potential platforms. Are you going to run pilots for them in tandem? How do you, go ahead, explain how will roll out.
We are going to be doing one at a time. We are going to be meeting as a group once the pilot is accepted to really hash out all of those things. However, we're looking at around 3 weeks for each one.
So I think I caught there is no cost to any of the pilots. Okay, so as far as the pilot being accepted, I don't know the board needs to take action. Do we need to take action on the pilot?
I think so. We typically, policy asks for board approval for pilots.
Regardless of whether or not there's cost. Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
So if that's the case, and you do a 3-week, what's that timeline to a recommendation?
So, in the presentation,
11th was
yeah.
one.
Well, we should be able to be finished before that because we'll need to be ready for June.
Yeah, okay.
Ms. White, can we have that to be voted at the
Yes. Let's do it.
I forgot the name. Huh? The work session. Yeah.
So I guess that's why I was asking if you even need to wait for it's February for March, but it sounds like you do because like somebody's a rule follower. Okay, Jason too. Don't want to make Jason mad. So if we do that in March and you can get started right then,
3 weeks per
3
pilot.
weeks,
Well, actually-
3 weeks. So that's by May. You could have yes, Jason.
I am. Actually, we could add it to the data presentation, and that way they give even more time.
Or, yeah. Could do that if you're ready.
And in that time, we can definitely.
I just want to get you 7 more days.
We can definitely get you the answers to your questions in that time as well. It's not going to be dead use of time.
Well, part of the questions are you're going to find out throughout the pilot, right? So you're going to see which one you like best. Ultimately, the recommendation, I don't think the money is a significant amount. I think ultimately we should have the most dynamic process for everybody that's using it, both internally, meaning professional staff, and then also obviously students. So if we're okay with that, we can add it to the data presentation evening.
do that.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Saylor. That was a big contribution help. Let's push it up to
I came
7 days.
specifically for that.
Just to give it the go-ahead.
Now I'm leaving.
Mr. Liggett is in support. Dr. Weston, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. I'm glad to see this moving
Yeah.
forward. I remember when my daughter was getting ready to apply for colleges, being encouraged to use Naviance. She found Naviance not very user-friendly, and was kind of annoyed that she had to use it. So something that is better is certainly going to be welcome.
I feel upset that you have had to struggle so hard with it for so long. So let's fix it. Oh, listen, I'm sure very adaptable, not cursing anyone while you're doing it, right? So once we find that out, so as soon as the pilot's approved, you get going on your little pilot studies, and then we'll have a recommendation. As soon as you have a recommendation, we can vote on the recommendation, and I'm sure Mr. Reaver would be happy to roll that all into whatever it is. Thank you for the due diligence of making the case of why the other one was so bad, but I think after the first slide, we were like, okay, they need something different. We're tracking it in Excel or Google Docs are the two things that are
Carving
like,
it in stone,
yeah, right.
size
It sounds,
of
it's
it.
almost the same as that, right? Okay, thank you very much for the
Thank you so much.
diligence.
And if you guys have any questions as you let this marinate, feel free to reach out. Like I said, we have really great access.
Amanda, I have a quick question. I know you're trying to get out of here. What about our 8th graders? I believe our 8th graders access Naviance at the middle level. Right. So do we have thoughts about transitioning them as well, or would they stay with Naviance?
No, the thought would be, especially
maybe we can lay out all the costs in the minutes for this meeting so that anybody reading those can see clearly what each one would cost, whether we incorporate it into the middle school or whether we stay with what we have. That would be really helpful. So that's good to know. Thank you.
The middle school is looking to not utilize Naviance. To Amanda's point, I will say, though, that depending on the pilot, they are also going to pilot each 3 of them and then identify through the rubric which one will best benefit K through 6, 6 through 8. Thank you.
So we intend for the next one to be just as easy. So now,
Approved. Not for this one. Not for this one.
so Natalie, we're going to turn this over to you so you can talk about the elementary music material pilot. Once again, I'll drive here. Oh, Mike.
Hit on him.
The current elementary music resource, Interactive Music by Pearson, is expiring in June. So we have a committee that includes all 4 of the Gen Ed music teachers, myself as well as a music department chair, worked as a committee to review 3 resources that I'll show you on the following slides. We use the criteria established in Policy 108, alignment to standards, differentiation and accessibility, and usability, readability, cultural relevance, as well as, teacher preference and the teacher's opinion on the interface and regarding how efficient it was for them. One of the resources that we reviewed is Hal Leonard's Essential Elements music class. There are many strengths, so this actually received all points on the rubric from the committee, as well as some bonuses that are listed there. There's a subscription to NoteFlight, which is a music composition software that the teachers were very excited to have access to, as well as choral music included, and it paired easily with Google Classroom. So those were just some additional features that they were excited about in addition to the ones that were already on the rubric. One of the challenges, even though that this software was purported to service K through 5, we saw that many of their resources were geared toward grades 3 through 5. And we weren't sure that there were enough resources available for our primary students. In opposition to that, Music Play, one of the challenges there is that it was geared more toward primary students, and the teachers worried that the 3 through 5 students might not relate to all of the resources. But again, this resource received full marks on the rubric, with strong alignment to standards, multiple resources for differentiation, cultural and racial diversity of selections, as well as selections that were both modern and classic. And then a few bonuses also that the teachers wanted to point out. There were some substitute lessons. It's difficult sometimes for a gen ed or a general music teacher to have a sub come in because they don't have that music background. But this online platform had videos that the sub could play so that students could continue learning the music curriculum in the teacher's absence. The third resource that we evaluated was Quaver Music. One of the teachers used this platform in a previous district and said that the selections were the same. So one of the challenges is that the content is not updated. Additionally, there wasn't opportunity for differentiation. There was one lesson, one activity to go with that lesson, one song, so there wasn't really a range for the teachers to have access to. The content they thought was not relatable. It lacked diversity, and as I said, it hadn't been updated, where the other resources were updated on a daily basis. In fact, I just checked today, and there were even more resources that had been updated. Whatever's Thank you. Excuse me. um, I had a really bad cold a couple weeks ago and the flu. And the lingering side effect is this lingering dry cough. Okay. There were some strengths for Quaver music, including the alignment standards. And it also paired well with Google Classroom. So our recommendation is to do a comparative pilot with Essential Music's Element class, Music Play Online. And then there are some of the look-fors that we'll be looking for as we pilot, as well as, teacher preference and usability. We're looking for approval for the pilot to run March through May. All 4 of the gen ed music teachers want to pilot the resource. It would not be done at the same time, but rather pilot one resource and then switch to the other. And then we'd be looking to select and look for recommendation for purchase in June.
Are there costs associated with the pilots?
There's no cost for the pilot.
Okay. And then should the, with regards to the 2, what are the cost differences for the license for both of them?
So let's see. Essential Elements is $7,200,
Oh, it's cheap. Okay.
and Music Play is $6,000.
Okay. So okay, let me figure out how to word it. It sounds as though, based on the strengths and weaknesses between the 2, that there may be an advantage to actually having one be for K through 2, and the second one be for, let's say,
3 to
or
5.
6, or 6. And so, as an elementary, a higher elementary option. So, is that something that you have given directive that could be a recommendation?
The teachers did discuss that as a possibility and preference. We will pilot both.
From the perspective of trying them for the whole thing, but understanding that the best option may be a little bit of a hybrid mix between up until 2nd grade they use X, and
Yes.
then 3rd grade is when they start an instrument, and that actually rolls into the Essential Elements curriculum that is used in the instruments that as they're taught. Okay.
Yep. There would not be a cost reduction, though, if we only use it for some grades.
Understood. It would be
'Cause we would
basically
have
buying
access.
2. Understood.
Yes.
And so, with regards to the platforms, what is the dynamic of allowing for mobile, or not mobile, but remote access on the Chromebooks? Like, are there lessons, like, say, I don't know if there would be necessarily homework. That's not the right thing. But are there videos and lessons that could be actually added to, like, a Google Classroom with a link?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was
Both of these?
no. It was only in one for sure. We could investigate the other one, but
Okay.
that wasn't highlighted by the vendor.
Okay. I just was
Yeah.
curious. I'm really interested in the potential for the composition software component of the Essential Elements. I actually pay for a composition software it's an app and it's an online platform, because I think it's an important creativity learning tool, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use it.
Yes.
And I think that if that does exist for the general ed music classes, it can parlay into orchestra and band experiences for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders. I just think I think it's a nice marriage of resources.
Agreed. Yeah.
Ms. White, can we add this to the presentation as well? My button's on. Yeah.
We will add this to the presentation as well. All pilots will be approved at the data presentation.
Are there resources, and thinking about, along, going up to, with the realignments that we're considering, are there resources that would cover 6th grade in these guys as well?
It's a good question. I know that Music Play Online is definitely K to 5, but I do believe that the Essential Elements goes through 8th grade.
Yeah, okay.
But I will look into that and confirm. Yeah.
Yeah, please do, because that will be a consideration
Yep.
going forward. You don't want to continue with interactive music, or you're not able to continue with interactive music?
The teachers prefer not to move forward with interactive music. It's also, the cost for interactive music was a lot more than even the two combined, if that's the direction they want to move. But the offerings of Essential Elements and Music Play individually even were more than what's offered with interactive music.
All right.
That's okay. Our next item is a gifted services review through the intermediate unit. So the IU had reached out to us to share an opportunity to do a gifted services review, knowing that we were in the middle of looking at our gifted program, and this is a service that we had received previously for our English language development program. So this will be a similar service that they would be doing a comprehensive review. The areas for the review, as it says there, so these are the areas they would look at: identification, equity, learning development, learning environment, programming, professional learning, and district communication. They would do all these things through document reviews, teacher interviews, administrative interviews, and surveys. We get to set the parameters for how broad or how narrow the scope of this work is. And they are calling this we can go up to what they call a comprehensive review, which includes all of these elements, or we can pare down to what we believe is necessary for our programming. This will generate a report. The report will talk about the program as it exists, but also make recommendations for going toward the future based on regulations and best practices. And they will be able to conduct this review during the spring, so they'd be able to have this to us before the end of the school year. And the cost to the district would be zero. So this would be part of a grant that they have, and we'd be able to be part of that grant.
Beautiful.
Any questions about this? Okay, so this was information. They will send us the full proposal that we will eventually bring to the board for approval.
I just have one quick question with regard to how this information will play into the universal screener that we previously discussed, if at all.
So as they're taking a look, you see the different categories, that identification and equity. That's where they will be making recommendations around.
Awesome. So reevaluate after the information is received.
Correct.
Wonderful.
All right. And then our last item, and we're going to turn this over to Dr. Clune. I'm going to drive a little bit for you. And this is around preparation for our online state testing.
So as we prepare to transition to state online testing assessments for PSSA and Keystones, we're going to be working to help prepare our staff and our students in this new format. First thing, we're going to kind of work backwards. This is our schedule of dates for our PSSA assessments and our Keystone assessments. Middle school algebra Keystone is on separate days from the high school because high school has asynchronous days and the middle school does not. But those would be consistent days other than that for all of that testing. And there's a few professional development opportunities. ELA, PSSA Keystones, a couple of the tools actually would be, we would be kind of pointing out or helping teachers use with some current trainings that are optional for teachers to participate in. PDE has also offered specifically mathematics PSSA Keystone online training that's grade specific. So 3 through 8, as well as Algebra 1, they had specific trainings kind of going over all the different tools. And we've been we've had a number of staff actually go to these trainings, and we're going to be using that information to turnkey with our teachers. And then during March through April, we actually have planned out a set of skills that we want to facilitate that includes short instructional videos, not just the actual tools that are available in the PDE portal for PSSAs and for Keystones, but also having students practice sample type questions, writing out those questions using like Equation Builder and some of these other tools. And we actually have it mapped out in a pretty systematic way so that students grades 3 through 8, and then course specific at the high school for literature, biology, and algebra 1 will be very familiar with this online format and also using these online tools by time the PSSAs start.
Yes.
So the PSSAs are all going to be online, and are all going to be online now. No more paper. So then I have a question. Ms. White, you might remember Mr. Liggett and Dr. Wesson weren't on the board when this happened. So last year and a half ago, we had a building level complaint. We went to a committee with Dr. Campley and myself, where we put together an agreement with the union on responsibilities of the principals. Where does that stand now with the MOU that was derived? Or maybe there wasn't, I don't want to use the wrong word, maybe there wasn't an MOU derived, but where does that stand with the agreement with the union and the board?
So it wasn't an MOU, it was a protocol though that we developed and with input from all sides. And there's much less legwork when the tests are administered online. So there's no tests to organize and put labels on and to keep locked up in a closet. So a lot of that will be dismissed, it'll be set aside. It won't apply because everything is on the computer.
Is there still a protocol of who's responsible for what? Now that it's all online, or?
So that would be a good question for Dr. Clune. Oftentimes in the past, my experience has been students get tickets to log on. So somebody has to download those tickets, print them out so students know, how to log in.
I mean, we had like a 4-page protocol that was agreed upon that basically said this is what this person does, this is who's going to walk down a hallway, this is who's going to find staple. We should probably have another agreement with the union to what's the new life of inside the building with the PSSA.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. We should revisit the responsibilities around preparing to administer and then post-administration.
If I'm not mistaken, the PSSA is literally in their contract because they brought up a contractual dispute, and so I think there's verbiage in the teacher's contract that mentions the PSSA exam.
I don't think it was their contract, but let me review that. We can talk more about that, or I'll put it in the memo and summarize it, yes. But I think it's a good point to review procedures, protocols. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Okay, I didn't want to cut you off mid-thought. So I guess my concern with regard to this, as I've understood it, and taking a look at some of like the sample question formats, is that based on how they'll look on the screen, there is the potential for there to be confusion around how students answer and interpret the questions. Say, for example, on the ELA PSSA, there may be put it in sequential order. If the items aren't dragged vertically, but they're put horizontally, it could seem as though it's a wrong answer when the interpretation of how it was supposed to be answered is not received a certain way. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So I'm wondering, with regard to Mr. Saylor's point about what everyone's going to need to do to unpack this, when the electronic tests are completed by our students, is there a layer before they're submitted finally for almost like an audit? Like, say you see 40% get question 6 wrong, that seems like a super high number to have that. Maybe there's a problem with how question 6 was answered.
Yeah, it's not the
No,
same test, though, correct?
I would. It's students are all taking the same. Like if
But
I'm
the
in,
test can't be the same anymore because even the way it's worded, anytime you go from paper to online, from a questionnaire development, their vernacular changes and the instructions change. So the assumption should be is that this is a totally different worded test, to Mrs. White's point, because how something is worded on pen and paper to how something is worded, how a questionnaire is written for it to be read with a pen and paper is different than worded online. There are 2 different ways to ask the same question.
I would have to get back with you at exactly how the paper and pencil wording of the questions differ in paper and pencil to online. I can tell you that as far as students answering the question, part of our protocol is that the PDE is recommending the computer lets the student know if there's any questions they didn't answer.
Sure.
And then in our proctoring expectations, the student has to raise their hand and ask the proctor to come over and check their page that they've answered the questions. If they haven't, the proctor's permitted to say, I can see here that 4 of the, I don't know how many questions are not answered. Students still can click submit, but at least they're aware that they're submitting without answering certain questions.
And how do we prevent, before it's a piece of paper, you can't have the computer up. You can only have this particular calculator. You can have this number 2 pencil.
Well, you're still allowed to use an actual calculator. You don't have to use the online calculator that they give you. We still have our same protocols in terms of clearing it and making sure that it's ready and approved to be used in the classroom.
But it's probably it's like a College Board browser. I'm assuming it would be. They're only going to that. That's the site that they can only be on.
That's what I'm
It'll
asking.
lock down the Chromebook. They have like a little browser thing, and it basically locks the whole thing down.
So I guess that's really what, in line with taking a look at PSSA data for progress monitoring, it seems as though there's going to be.
PDA would say that there isn't. They have research
but
to back
there's
up.
going
There's
to
not a
be
big difference
that as
between
we're
paper and
looking at
pencil and
data,
digital. That's what they tell
When
us.
our math scores show that we're at a proficiency level of 30%, and we know we went to a new platform of giving the assessment.
How many students took it online last year? Do we know it? Like what percentage of students took it online last year?
We can find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assume when it was offered online last year, they didn't have double worded questionnaires, meaning one for paper and pencil and one for online. Yeah.
I agree. They will say that, but I'm just saying we have
And-
a plan going into the problem.
You mean in terms of how students score?
In terms of, that's why I say about an audit, like, is there a level of review prior to final submission of the tests?
That's
To is there a way to troubleshoot some of that, to see, like,
I can't imagine that would be part of the system.
wouldn't or would?
Would not.
Yeah, okay.
Test.
Right.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that
I
would be
mean,
part
it's
of
sort
the
of a
system.
rhetorical question, but, and it's not like, it's not something that you've discussed, I'm sure, but I
But-
kind of am saying it from the
Yeah.
just
Yes.
saying it out loud standpoint, acknowledging that there's going
I'm
to be.
more thinking about all the other issues that are gonna happen now, like how many plugs are in a room? If a student's laptop needs to be charged up, how are we gonna get it charged up?
The actual logistics of how this is going to go, I would like to hear more about. You mentioned about a proctor coming around and, checking.
On their final page. So Proctor's PD has recommended to us and to other school districts that when a student, when it's online, the computer will actually tell you which questions have been completed and which ones have been left unanswered. And it's on a final page. And in our protocols, or in our Proctor plan, the plan is that the student, before they click submit, finalize, they have to raise their hand, have the proctor come look at their screen and be able to see that all the questions have been answered. And if not, the proctor can at least tell the student, hey, I can see that so many questions have been unanswered. I want to make sure you're aware of that before you click submit.
Does the proctor see how the student has answered any of the
No,
questions?
no. You
Yeah.
won't. The only thing you're going to see is the actual page, one page that has all of the question numbers, and it'll highlight which ones have not been answered.
Yeah. 100
So the
questions,
proctor
17 blank.
still won't be seeing the test. They're only going to be seeing the final questions.
Okay. How much classroom time is devoted to the structured preparation activities?
So I think there's two different activities. The one is all of the tools, and there's 11 specific tools that we're trying to teach the students. Highlighter, pointer, you've got this equation builder, like there's very specific tools. And then there's also practice questions that would use some of these tools. I think we're looking at we laid out a plan every week, which tools and which practice, like which topics we'd like the teachers to review. I can't imagine it taking more than 15, 20 minutes at most.
The goal is to get the students just comfortable with the testing
Yeah.
environment. I mean, and to ensure that as they're going through this, that they're not surprised by how the test is actually structured. That's the goal of the practice items that they'll go through, and just becoming familiar with all the tools and getting the practice with the tools. As the students get older, I mean, they're going into more online testing environments up through SATs that they'll be able to do this exact same way.
And in the past, when we've had a small number of students taking online PSSAs, we've had a training session, right, to go over those tools. The plan that we have now is actually to spread it out over several weeks and actually to spend just more time making sure that they feel as comfortable and familiar with the actual tools and the process of taking this online. So it's that doesn't become an issue for them being as successful as they can on the assessment.
And something that Mr. Saylor just brought up that I don't think had really registered with me before, we've had students taking both modalities up till now. We have some students taking it on paper and some students taking it online. Is that correct?
Majority have taken it paper and pencil, but there's always been a small number who have taken it online.
And we lump all those results together.
Yes, they come out as one set of results.
I'm
And to be clear,
comfortable with that, but
it is still possible to take the test paper and pencil if it is an accommodation that a student has in their IEP. Or
Wait, I'm
504.
confused. So, okay, I didn't know that came out. So is the state saying we want to do this online, or is the school saying they want to do this online?
By next year, all school districts are expected to be online.
By next year, all school districts are expected to be online.
For PSSAs and Keystones.
And that's what the state is saying?
Yes.
Someone's losing a lot of money printing all that paper, so I'm actually shocked to hear that. Because the main reason to me there's PSSAs is to pay someone's paper company to print the exams, because that's what they're worth.
I think it's to pay the testing company to develop and administer the
And no
exam.
different than the textbook
Somebody's
companies.
making money.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody's making money.
So the textbook companies, as they moved online, none of the prices dropped. So
Yeah.
paper or online, they're still going to get their money.
So we always had a proctor in a room, right?
Yes.
So that's not going to change. little differential of who's picking who's labeling and who's doing all that.
There's
What-
no labels. There's
I
just
know.
simply
We used to have someone that was in
Right.
charge of the labels, and this
Mhm.
person was in charge of the cart and rolling the cart down the hall. So we used to have all those things, right? Now I'm being dead serious when I say, how are we going to ensure that there's enough power for all the laptops? Because if a student's laptop suddenly is needing of power in the middle of the test, they can't take it over. We're going to have to get them plugged in. And so, we're going to have to remind students, hey, make sure your laptop's charged up. Okay, but that's great. But if it's not, that's our responsibility to make sure.
Right.
You know,
when
yeah,
when they're online, we can pause the test for a student. Let's say if they go to the bathroom or something like that. There is a way to pause it.
Yeah.
I would assume if there was an issue with the student's power, we would then work to try to get them plugged in somewhere, or
Yeah.
place them, get them a Chromebook.
Because
or
it happens
something.
now that students' Chromebooks go dead in the middle of the
Correct.
class, and you just, okay, don't let that happen again. Make sure you charge it up. Go charge it up now. Continue
And
learning.
we're
Or
sure
even
the
if they were
building is
to
thinking
lose
about that,
connection.
but we definitely want to make sure we have that full plan in place.
Yeah. Ooh, if they lose connection, too.
Right.
If that happens in the middle of an exam, that's going to affect the performance on the exam.
Yeah. What happens, because PSAs are certain days, what happens, oh, never mind, I'm not even going down that route, but what happens if we lose the internet or, it's different with paper pencil. You just keep doing the exam. These are all the things that that's the state issue. That's the state issue.
How about the school districts that may not have a Chromebook for every student out in Western PA? You know, it's definitely going to be challenging in different ways.
Yeah. Is there, just out of curiosity, is there a way that the board can see the test before students see it? Just no?
No.
They don't show you the test?
No.
No.
In fact, we get in a lot of trouble if we would look at the test to examine it and it would be reported. There are released items. We have those in the data presentation.
Yeah.
You can get those online if you want.
Yeah.
You cannot review the test. No.
Can we get a past test?
Yeah, you can get released items. They are online, and I have put a few in the presentation.
I think I put that in an email to you one time.
Yeah.
Can the board actually take the test?
Well, there are definitely some released items that we can share. There's a couple that I put in the presentation just to give you a sense of what
Yeah.
the Math PSSA or Algebra 1 Keystone is like. Yes, and they're online. If you Google on PDE, you can get there.
And you
There's an online practice
Yes,
test.
you
too,
could
for-
practice
for
them
many of the
online.
tests.
We could pull that. Yeah. Sure.
No sneaking in the public record, so I'm just going to disavow any of that that was shared. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Dr. Kloon, for sharing that, and that ends our agenda. Thank you.